is a special live stream. Just bringing up the stream on my phone here so I can monitor the chat for any questions. Everybody had a wonderful Tuesday. I'm going to go ahead and bring the music down a little bit. I'll bring it down even more when we actually get started. Take this time to remind you of the new Discord that we have. If you want to come and join us on a Discord, all the players from the games that I run, as well as myself, we have a Discord over there. You can come chat with us during the week between games, leave questions, comments, observations, all that stuff over there. Alright, I'm gonna bring the music almost all the way down now. We'll leave a little bit in the background. Alright, well, welcome everybody. Welcome to my first impressions of the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Now, a few years ago, I stopped buying all of the D&D source books in hardcover, not because I don't appreciate the hardcover, but just because running my games online, it's so much easier to get the versions that are in the versions that are on D&D Beyond, and use those because they're searchable, linkable, all that kind of good stuff, and it's very easy to get that. So today is when they officially went live, is the first time I have been able to get my hands on the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Now this is the cover, and typically this would be the cover that's spread out. So we have some characters from the adventure. And as you can see here on the front, there's a carnival. It's a very special kind of carnival, though. It's a carnival that would feel very familiar to people who either played World of Warcraft back in the day and remember the traveling carnival that shows up every now and then. I think it's like the Dark Moon Fair or something like that. It's been such a long time since I played World of Warcraft, but it was a carnival that would show up at certain times of the year, and you could go there, and it would have a bunch of quests, and you could gain tickets, and then eventually, if you turn in enough tickets, you could get some actually pretty good stuff if you wound up going through multiple seasons of the Dark Moon Fair and collecting enough tickets. Then that's one group of people that would find this familiar. The other group of people are literary fans. About 10 years ago, there was a book that came out. It was actually kind of a good book. It was a book that I learned about through a book club called Sword and Laser, which is a podcast book club, and hosted by a couple of longtime podcast hosts that I have followed for a very long time. And this book was called The Night Circus, and it chronicles the adventures of two apprentices whose wizard mentors have set them up in a competition against each other. And the whole competition centers around this kind of mystical, kind of spooky, kind of mysterious circus that only appears occasionally and is only open at night. It opens at dusk and everything closes up by dawn. So it's a kind of a strange sort of thing. And here in Wild Beyond the Witchlight, we have much the same thing. The vehicle by which the characters are drawn into the story is a circus that appears once every 8 years in a particular plane, and it then travels around to other different planes of existence, or other different, I guess, I don't know. In the way I've always thought of D&D is I always thought of the D&D multiverse as sort of every game setting is a world that is set within a different material plane. So the physical planet, if you will, that Greyhawk is on is not in the same plane of existence as the physical planet that the Forgotten Realms is on. Now, they're both material planes, and to their residents, they both seem like prime material planes, but you can't just like simply go on space travel and get from one to the other. You have to actually cross a planar boundary to get to the other. At least that's the way I've always imagined it. I really don't know what Gary Gygax and all the people at TSR and Wizards of the Coast intended with that. They may have intended it all to be part of the same universe, and that the other layers of the multiverse, the other planes of existence, just are anything that's part of the cosmology. Whatever. Alright. So, this particular circus, or carnival, if you will, travels from plane to plane and doesn't come back to the same world except every 8 years, but it doesn't always come back to the same place. It may go to other cities, other continents, other areas of that world every time it comes back. And the circus itself, or the carnival itself, originates from the Feywild, but the current owners of it do not. And in fact, here is the first little point where it intersects with other 5th edition source books and 5th edition lore. You remember, or you may remember, a source book that came out, a DM source book that came out a while back that talked about different settings and seemed like it was a riff on the Curse of Strahd. That book was Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. And one of the demi-planes or demi-domains that was detailed in that was a plane called the Carnival, which is a traveling circus, a rather macabre traveling carnival that was kind of inexplicably run by an Eladrin. An Eladrin being an elf who's native to the Feywild. This Eladrin sort of seems out of place, and yet rather content in the carnival. Well, that's because that carnival had its origins in the Shadowfell. And guess what? This carnival that's part of the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, the carnival is the one that the Eladrin used to run. But then it crossed paths with this particular carnival, and the owners of the two carnivals decided, you know what? I think your carnival sounds more fun to me than mine does. Why don't we swap ownership? And then the next time our paths meet, we will swap back. And that way we'll be able to find out whether our own carnival is more fun or your carnival is more fun. So this is where we meet the two Dusk Elves, who are elves that are native to the Shadowfell, that used to run the carnival that's in Van Richten's guide. Well, now they are running the carnival that's here in Wild Beyond the Witchlight. So that's kind of a really interesting little intersection. And then there's a tease at the beginning, because when you walk up to the ticket, booth, there is an image of a woman that appears in this little empty glass mirror-lined bookcase. And if you fail a saving throw, you start laughing, because the little sign says the sorceress Tasha, she of Tasha's hideous laughter. That's a tease. That's a tease. That's a tease for later in this adventure. The fact that the image of the person that greets you at the gates of the carnival is Tasha. Interesting, right? Okay, so in terms of details, I'm going to just sort of summarize the first part of this, which is the actual carnival itself. And I'm going to talk a little bit about where I think some of the ideas came from. Because this is brand new, and because I know a lot of DMs are going to want to run this, I'm not going to talk too much in any detail about what happens beyond the carnival, because, you know, I want that to still be a surprise for your players. If you go in there, I don't want them being able to go back and watch this video and go, oh, okay, well, when we get to this place, we got to watch out for that. Or we get to this other place, we got to watch out for this. So I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what happens here in the carnival and how the Feywild comes into it. So in the introduction, they give us a little bit of information about the Feywild. Now, I'll be absolutely honest. I've been playing this game since the late 1970s, early 1980s, and I've never really had a DM or run that when I was a player, and I've never really run a campaign as a DM that ventured much into the Feywild. It's always been something that's there, but I really didn't have a whole lot of exposure to it. My principal ideas of what the Feywild and D&D is all about were actually shaped by a long-term campaign that I listened to in podcast form that ran from, the story arc ran from 2009 and finally ended in 2019. So it was a whole decade-long story arc that was built in 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and they played 4E all the way through. That is the Critical Hit podcast, and the main storyline of it, written by DM Rodrigo Lopez, was the Void Saga. So this was a totally homebrew campaign, and what his specific inspirations for the Feywild are, I don't really know, but his description and imagining of the Feywild kind of is very much along the lines of what I always have envisioned the Feywild to be. Now this doesn't change that a whole lot, but there are some significant departures from details. And when we get towards the end of this, I'm going to talk a little bit about some ideas that I have in terms of how you might incorporate this into your own campaign, or some ways that you might modify this from the structure of how it's actually written, and make things a little bit different. Those all come from, or those largely were inspired, I should say, by Rodrigo. And there's a lot of probably what Rodrigo Lopez put into the Void Saga campaign that you'll hear in some of my suggestions. So, like all DMs, I steal freely from other people that have great ideas. And I like to try to give credit where it's due. All right, so the Feywild is sort of a whimsical plane, and you can really tell that I think Chris Perkins was still the principal author of this particular adventure. He has several times over the course of 5th edition, he's kind of made allusions to Alice in Wonderland. And it's really clear that when Chris Perkins thinks about the Feywild, he draws a lot of his inspiration from stories like Alice in Wonderland. So there's this carnival, and this carnival is a what the heck is the carnival called? The carnival is called the Witchlight Carnival, and the carnival includes a special place in like the funhouse, the Hall of Mirrors, where you can use a portal to go into the Feywild. But it's not just the Feywild in general. It's a very specific demiplane of the Feywild, and it's a demiplane of the Feywild that is in a little bit of trouble. So we have some brand new backgrounds, and we have some brand new races that are here that are playable. So let's go to the backgrounds. Oh, wait, Feywild Trinkets. Those are kind of cool. You remember how some of the adventures have included specific trinkets? I think Storm King's Thunder had giant trinkets, and then Out of the Abyss had Underdark trinkets, all that kind of stuff. Well, we have Feywild Trinkets here, and it's a D100 list, and so there's like 100 different trinkets, and it's everything from like a cookie cutter shaped like a unicorn, to a tiny bottle filled with rainwater collected from the Feywild, a weak magnetic wand, and 100-sided die the size of a plum cut out of coal, a barbell sized for a pixie or a sprite. So all of these things that you might find as a trinket. Then there's a couple of different backgrounds. There's the Feylost background, and the Witchlight hand background. So the Feylost imagines that your character as a child got lost. Did you get stolen? Did you run away? Did you simply accidentally wander into the Feywild? At some point, you managed to get into the Feywild, and many of your formative years were spent growing up in the Feywild. And you came back not entirely unchanged. You're haunted by the fact that the Feywild, a mirror world hidden behind a mere twist of perception, is only a hair's breadth away. Although your memories grow fainter every day, your heart swells with fear and joy at the prospect of one day venturing back. So you gain some skill proficiencies, tool proficiencies, language, and equipment. And then you get a Fey mark. And again, that's a D8, and it can be something like the eyes swirl with iridescent colors, your skin sparkles in moonlight, you have a tail like that of a dog or another animal. And then there's like a creature connection, a Feywild visitor. You occasionally will get visited by some kind of creature that is native to the Feywild, and it's always involves a conversation with this creature. So it can be anything from an awakened creature to a one of these races or special kinds of creatures. And you have a Feywild connection, so you have a little bit of knowledge, and because of your touch of the Feywild natives are likely to come to your aid. So basically, you can kind of have advantage on getting native creatures of the Feywild to help you when you and your party are there. Then the other new background is a Witchlight hand, which is a hand being like a carnival worker. So you work and live full time in the Witchlight Carnival, and that means that you travel with the carnival every time it leaves and sets up. And so every 8 years you come back to your own home world, but you travel to all the other places that the Witchlight Carnival goes in between visits. You gain some skill, performances, tool proficiencies, language, and equipment. And then you get a carnival companion. So you have another particular carnival worker that is a friend of yours, and that can kind of give you some bonuses while you're in the carnival. Then there's a couple of new playable races they've introduced for 5e here, and those races are the fairy, and there's different characteristics, and then all the traits and the size and the speed. And the interesting thing is that both of these fairy and Harengon races have the same ability score increase. So you choose any 2 abilities and raise one of them by 2 and increase a different one by 1, or you choose any 3 ability scores and raise all 3 of them by 1. And then languages, you get common and one other language that seems appropriate. So fairy is the first one, and fairies do get flying from level 1. So the flying speed is equal to the walking speed, but you cannot use flying if you're wearing medium or heavy armor. So it's just the armor makes it too heavy for you to fly. Then there's the Harengon. The Harengon they are rabbit folk. So you know how D&D, always has like the creature folk. They've got the turtle, which are the turtle folk, and the they've got the what the heck are the tabaxi, which are the feline folk, and you have all of these other things. Well, now the Harengon are bipedal rabbit folk. So you are anywhere from a small to a medium sized creature. You can choose to be either small or medium if you choose the Harengon race. And then you get some interesting other traits. Speed is normal, but you get to add your proficiency bonus to initiative rolls, and you get a modified lucky footwork, where when you make a dex save, if you fail it, you can add a d4 to try to make it. And then as a rabbit hop, as a bonus action, you can jump a number of feet equal to 5 times your proficiency bonus, and it does not provoke opportunity attacks. So that's kind of interesting. And then of course there's new character traits that go along with this particular adventure. If you're rolling up new characters, which they recommend starting with level 1, and you want to set them as characters for this adventure, you can play with these character traits. Now, because of the whimsical nature of this seems like it could be a good adventure if you have some younger players that want to play. It's got like all the talking animals, and it's got the crazy nature stuff. It's got some scary things, but of course, use your judgment based on your players and their sensibilities and everything. You can tone that down or ratchet it up depending on what's appropriate for your players. And so traits for your character, or for your characters, are another thing that you can add, and then custom flaws and custom bonds and ideals and all that kind of stuff. And then there's a couple of different hooks. So one of the hooks is lost things. Now there's a special thing about this particular carnival where if you go into the carnival and you don't have a ticket, thieves that have thieves who work for a group of people who have a special constraint on the owners of the carnival, they are permitted to steal something from you. And it's not just stealing like some stuff out of your pockets. In some cases, they steal like your ability to smile. There's one NPC who had their voice stolen from them. There's some other different things. So you can't keep secrets, you can't smile, you lost your artistic creativity, you lost a cherished doll or stuffed animal, you lost your handwriting, you lost your sense of direction, sense of fashion, or you lost 3 inches of height. So those are all things that could be lost. And then, of course, as a DM, you're free to come up with all kinds of other things that might have been lost. Okay, and then those lost things have wound up, wouldn't you know it, beyond the carnival in this little part of the Feywild. And this Feywild domain called Prismeer. And within the Feywild domain of Prismeer, there are 3 different entities that may have your lost things, and there's ways you roll to find out who has your lost things. All right, and then there's like some minor curses. It's possible that somebody who has lost something might have a curse, a minor curse. So an example of a curse is you can't light non-magical fires, you can't tie or untie a non-magical rope, and you can't open a door without knocking on it first. All right, so then there's a Warlock's Quest hook. So there's there's the character meets an aging warlock that tells them about a Feywild realm called Prismere, which can be reached only by finding and using a Fey crossing that is inside the Witchlight Carnival. And the warlock tells you that his patron rules Prismere, but his patron hasn't spoken to him in a long time, and he thinks something may be wrong. So he's kind of lost his warlock capabilities, and he needs the party to go investigate what's happening and see what's happened to his patron. So that's a little bit about where the background is. And then there's quite a nice treasure that you could wind up getting if you go and do this quest for the warlock. And also there's another little detail that when the warlock tells you about his patron, you remember a detail from your childhood that as he describes this person, you remember somebody matching that description helped you. So now there's not only this quest you're doing, but there's also a personal connection, tenuous though it may be. And usually it's just like, you were lost and they helped you find your way home, or you fell into an icy pool and they pulled you out. Or your family was very poor and this person gave you some money so that you wouldn't go hungry, or you wouldn't lack for anything. So it's that kind of thing. It's not a tight bond with this person, but just a memorable event of this person helping you. And so that could be motivation for your character to want to go and return that favor by trying to help this person now that they are apparently in trouble. All right, so that's the sort of whole setup. Then we get to the Witchlight Carnival. And the Witchlight Carnival is this mystical carnival that, like other carnivals, travels in wagons. But the wagons are all pulled by either flying foxes or flying horses. And the wagons themselves also fly, and they come down into the world, and they alight, and then within an hour of the time they land, mystically the carnival is all set up. And it stays there for a few days or maybe a few weeks, and then when it's time to go, within an hour it's all back. Everything is all packed up, and the carnival wagons all take off into the sky and go not to be seen in this world again for another 8 years. So there's a mysterious benefactor that when the characters arrive at the carnival, you know, they could buy tickets of their own, but the ticket taker or the ticket person at the ticket desk recognizes them by descriptions and goes digging around and says, "Oh, an anonymous benefactor has already bought you tickets for the carnival. Here you go. Welcome. Enjoy the Witchlight Carnival." And then, of course, it's like, well, who's bought us these tickets and why? So there's the interesting thing about this carnival and why I talked about the Night Circus book a little while back is that the carnival always begins at dusk, and it runs for 8 hours, and it ends just before dawn. And there's certain events that happen at the at different hours of the night. So in hour 1, there are welcome gifts. So small gifts get handed out to lucky guests. Hour 4, there's a big top extravaganza. It's a show that happens at midnight. Characters get the chance to dazzle spectators and impress the carnival's ringmaster. And then there's the crowning of the Witchlight Monarch. And the Witchlight Monarch is the guest at the carnival who has helped to increase the mood of everybody in the carnival more than all of the other guests. And that guest is crowned as the Witchlight Monarch. And they are also, the person who wins that is offered a chance to meet the carnival's owners. And so mood is very important, and it's really interesting how mood works, and it kind of echoes the Feywild origins. So when you raise or when you lower the mood, if you raise the mood, the spirits are high. So colors appear more vibrant, flowers bloom around the fairground, shooting stars sweep across the clear blue sky. But when the mood lessens or it becomes darker, the calliope music plays discordantly, the staff of the carnival is all tense, and then the sky is filled with storm clouds instead of, clear open sky and shooting stars. And the two owners are a pair of Shadar Kai, which are those elves that are native to the Shadowfell, named Mr. Witch and Mr. Light. And there's a there's a whole story about how they came from their plane of origin in a carnival, ran across the carnival run by the Eladrin, and then the owners swapped carnivals. And they have to swap back the next time the two carnivals cross paths. And it's unclear how long ago that happened, but the carnivals have never crossed paths. So there's Mr. Witch, and he's kind of dresses usually like a gentleman, always wears a top hat, and has a fancy watch and a fancy cane. And then there's Mr. Light, who is who's really kind of dresses very flamboyantly. He's a rather skinny person, and he always dresses up in costumes and makeup, and he has this very strange scepter that he always carries around with him. And then there are the Witchlight Hands. And the Witchlight Hands, those are all of the carnival workers that make the carnival run. And then we have this really cool Witchlight Carnival, and the carnival map shows all of the attractions, And when you get your ticket, the ticket is good for 8 punches. And most of the attractions that you go to cost 1 punch. Some attractions are free and some cost 2 punches. So the implication is if you go to multiple attractions, if you run out, then you can go back to the ticket booth and you can buy another ticket and then go see more attractions and everything. So there's an etiquette in the carnival. There are, as I said, there are thefts. And if you are a ticket-carrying member and you steal from somebody, you will be asked to leave and you'll be escorted to the gates and sent away. Then there's little scenes that you can roll on periodically to sort of bring the carnival to life for your players. They give you 8 of them, but of course you're free to make up a bunch of your own. And then there are some wandering outsiders. So there are these thieves, and these thieves are tied to the coven that sort of holds sway over the owners, or kind of has a dark bargain over the owners of the carnival. And part of that bargain means that when somebody enters the carnival and doesn't have a ticket, these thieves are allowed to steal things from them, like the ability to smile or the ability to go through a door without knocking on it or something like that. And those items that are stolen are hidden in one of the areas of the Feywild domain of Prismeer. And so if the party goes through the whole adventure, they have an opportunity to figure out who is keeping the item that was stolen from them, and they can go and find that item and retrieve it. And then there's so these are the thieves that wander around. There's a Lornling thief, a ghoul that wears the mask of a pig, and then a shadow that is one of the thieves. And you can barter for a ticket, or you can buy a ticket. And if you buy a ticket, that's fine. You just get a chance to go to the 8 attractions. If you barter for a ticket, you have to make a pact with the ticket taker or the ticket seller. And the pact is a minor pact, but it's kind of an echo, and it's kind of a neat idea here. It's a good way of thinking about the ideas of pacts that are made with very powerful Feywild beings. Now, one of the things that I really like from Rodrigo's game, and when they were doing the Void Saga, the whole story arc they had while they were in the Feywild, the Greater Fey were always described as very dangerous and treacherous creatures, even though they might be very pleasant. And there were several rules, and 2 of them that I remember. I don't remember all the rules he had for them, but 2 of the rules were never accept any food or drink that's offered to you, and never ask a Greater Fey for a favor. And because either one of those basically opens you up to a bargain with the Fey, with the Greater Fey. And the rumor is that anyone who makes a pact with a Greater Fey disappears and was never heard from again. So the implication being that, yeah, it's kind of like he kind of set it up so that these greater Fae, like you make a bargain with them, it's kind of like selling your soul to the devil. You know, you just are gone and you're never heard from again. And so that is, there's no coming back from that bargain once it's made. And so in this case, the ticket pact lasts only for one night, and there is a if you meet all the conditions of the pact, you're well on your way to becoming the Witchlight Monarch. If you fail, then there's like some minor consequences that happen. So some of the ideas they give you for these pacts are: you can't knowingly tell a lie, you have to wear a crown of flowers and water it every hour without taking it off, perform a short dance whenever you hear someone say your name, can't talk about your favorite subject, carry around a small pumpkin as though it were a precious egg, must greet all trees with reverence, and you must compliment everybody you meet or declare your love for unicorns at every opportunity. And so, some of those will get a little bit tedious to role play, but some of them might be a little bit easier. And then as a DM, you can think of, okay, well, what could maybe be some things that I could think of as these little minor things, and just things that I would remind the players about. Oh, hey, it's getting close to the top of the hour, and if there's something that they're supposed to do every hour, just occasionally prompt that and use that as a way of reminding the player, oh yeah, I made that bargain, and what they have to do. And of course, if they don't remember that they made that bargain, then okay, now there's some consequences. So there's big top acts, and then there's the big top extravaganza that happens at midnight, and that extravaganza is kind of like a bit of a talent show, if you will. So if you have the you can watch all the shows of the other performers, or if somebody wants to try to perform, they can go and do something and make some performance checks and find out whether they wind up winning that performance or not. And of course, the better you do in that's another way you can get closer to being crowned the Witchlight Monarch for the night. All right, but then there's all these kinds of other places you can go to. There's a bubble pop teapot, and that is a ride, and the teapot is shaped like a dragon, and it blows these bubbles out of its snout. And if you go into the bottom of the teapot, then when the dragon blows a bubble, it will actually put you inside the bubble, and you'll float out over the carnival. Now, because of the mystical nature of the carnival, the bubble will never float away from the carnival, and it will eventually come back and settle back to Earth and pop, so that people don't get injured. And there's a calliope that can be heard throughout the carnival, and there's a very strange monkey that operates the calliope, and there's a little bit of digging. This is a monkey that can actually speak to you, and it's a monkey that asks for people's buttons. and it has a cloak on which are sewed a whole bunch of different buttons that it has gotten from guests, over the time it's worked there. And if you give the monkey some buttons, you can, that makes you, that raises the mood of the carnival, and it helps somebody to perhaps get closer to being named as the Witchlight Monarch. And also, when you give the button to the monkey, it has advantages later in the game. So if you're in the Feywild and you become lost or you become trapped, if you've helped out the monkey by giving him buttons, then one time and one time only for your party, it can help one person get to safety. And so that would be, that's kind of an interesting thing there. Then there's a carousel, and the carousel appears to be operated by a centaur. However, the centaur, if you call her a centaur, she will say, no, I'm a human who made a bad deal. And if you win her trust, she will tell you the deal was she had lost her warhorse, or she was a paladin who had lost her warhorse, and she came across a woman who promised to reunite her with her warhorse. And, if she would make a bargain with her. So the paladin made the bargain, and sure enough, she reunited her by fusing the top half of the paladin's body onto the body of the warhorse. So it's like, ooh, that's a bit tricky. And this is kind of where you start to get into the sorts of things that remind me a lot of Rodrigo's take on the Feywild from the Void Saga. You start making bargains with Fey. You better be really darn careful what you ask for, because there's some way they can twist and turn that. Ooh, they're gonna make you sorry you ever made that bargain. So that's a thing. And then there's a there's some information she cannot tell the party, and there are unicorns that make up the horses that you ride on the carousel, and these unicorns have paired names, and she offers you the chance to repair the names and determine what the names of the unicorns are. And they are unicorns that all are named based on real world aphorisms. So, and they're aphorisms that are common in the English language. So now if you're a DM and you're running for players who are not native English speakers, or who don't have a really good grasp on English aphorisms or English idioms, then you can come up with some other types of things, and you might give them names that are synonymous with like songs that are popular with your groups of friends, or that if they're people that are from a different national background, maybe like if everybody is Spanish speakers, then maybe some Spanish proverbs, or if they're from Brazil, maybe some Portuguese proverbs or something like that. that you might give them that they may know. So those are some options there. And then there's dragonflies that are, or giant dragonflies that will give people rides above the fair. There's a treant sapling that they can talk to. And the treant sapling is very bad at keeping secrets, so they can sort of get it to divulge a bunch of information. And then there's a place called the Feasting Orchard. And the Feasting Orchard includes all kinds of wonderful trees and music and frolicking and merrymaking. And then every so often there is a fairy cake eating contest. And the contest tables piled high with small glazed cupcakes, each filled with a dollop of berry custard. And eat as many cupcakes as you can within 60 seconds. And there's rules for the constitution checks and everything that you make. And if you win the contest, you earn a cupcake that functions like a potion of invisibility. And you have to eat the whole cupcake to gain the benefit. And it's also in this feasting orchard where you can meet a bard, a gnome bard that turns out to be the person that bought your tickets for you to get into the carnival. And she's not just any bard. She's actually a bard that first appeared in the D&D 3.5 edition Player's Handbook as a cleric of the god Carl Glittergold. And later, as in just earlier in 2021 later, she was published as one of the planeswalking cards from the Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in Forgotten Realms expansion for Magic the Gathering. So here's yet another crossover where Magic the Gathering reached back into D&D's past, brought a character, made her a planeswalker, at least in this particular expansion. And then D&D crossed over to that recent expansion and brought her back into 5th edition as a character in this adventure. So that's a very interesting person that's in there, and she will kind of give the player some hints about what's so special about this carnival and the fact that they are here for a reason they may not yet understand. And she'll she'll give them some hints, and she will sort of guide them if they're having a real hard time figuring out what to do. But if they are doing just fine, she won't take any she won't participate in anything they're doing, and she doesn't leave the carnival. She doesn't go with them beyond that. Basically, she's kind of like the person that says, oh, adventurers, they're here for adventure, and these are the right people to do this grand deed. I'm going to help them get started, and then I'll be the one that gets to sing the tale of their heroic deeds. You kind of get the impression that's what her deal is. She's in it to be able to tell the story about the characters after they finish their adventure. So then there's these, you've seen from the map here, there's this big river that goes all the way around the edge of the carnival, and you can ride on a swan that pulls a gondola boat, and go all the way around the carnival in that. And the swan, of course, is awakened and it talks. And it tells you some information if you impress it or if you're nice to it and all this kind of stuff. Then there's the Hall of Illusions, the halfling that you see as you're walking up to it. You see this halfling male kneel down in front of a halfling female, try to give her a ring, and when he does, she starts bursting out in laughter. And the reason is because she's too close to that cabinet, and the sign at the top of the cabinet reads, Tasha the Wizard, known for her hideous laughter. So that is... the one guy runs away, and then, of course, the party has a chance to maybe figure out if they put two and two together, Tasha's hideous laughter, figure out that she wasn't laughing at his proposal, she was laughing because of the spell, and they might be able to rescue him and bring him back, but they also might wind up witnessing him getting taken into the Feywild by somebody else through a mirror, and then they find they can't go through that mirror themselves. So then they have to figure out, oh gosh, if we want to go save that guy, how do we go into that mirror? And there's a mime. The mime is somebody who has had his voice stolen. Literally, he cannot speak, and he is in love with a mermaid, and the mermaid will not marry him until he tells her that he loves her, and of course, because his voice has been stolen, he can't tell her. So there's all kinds of things. Then there's kind of a lost and found area, and this lost and found area is patrolled by a neutral good displacer beast that watches children that are unattended while their parents or guardians go and run errands in the carnival. So the displacer beast, of course, will talk to people, and when they walk up to it, it's playing with a couple of children, and then when one of the boys goes and grabs a ball, the displacer beast gets angry and snatches the ball away, and it scares the child, and the child runs off. And so then there's an opportunity to go find the child, bring the child back, and then of course there's a story. Why did the displacer beast act that way when the child touched that ball? Well, if you win its trust, the displacer beast will tell you that story. And of course that story has a continuation once you get beyond the carnival. There's a mystery mine, which is kind of a spin on the old haunted house ride. Basically, you look into an object and you make a save, and if you fail that save, then this object somehow knows your worst fear. And when you go on this haunted ride, your worst fear is shown to you as an illusion, along with a lot of other scary types of things. And because you failed that saving throw, you freak out and you scream horribly and everything. And that's the thrill of the ride. If you wind up passing the save, then instead of being frightened by your worst fear, you find it comical. And so that's another That's another thing, and it's harmless. There's no lasting effects from any of that stuff. So there's Pixie Kingdom. There's Alasha the Mermaid, and there's some hecklers, and there is a heckler, and this heckler is a shape-changing kinku that, of course, is hard to find because it can use illusions to. Or it's not shape changing, it's disguise. It has illusion magic in the form of disguise self. So with its voice mimicry and its disguise self spell casting ability, the heckler is able to look like different things. And if it harasses the mermaid too much, that brings the mood of the carnival down. If the party are able to stop the heckler and return the mermaid, then it brings the mood of the carnival back up. So there's a bunch of little stalls and carnival games. And of course, again, with all the carnival games, this is one of the things that reminds me of the Dark Moon Fair from World of Warcraft. So it has this one has the Almirage ring toss. The Almirage are those little rabbit creatures with the unicorn horn, and it's a statue of a Almirage. So you're not throwing things at a real bunny, but this statue teleports from place to place on this playing field, and so you have to stand in place and you have to try to toss the ring and get it onto the horn, which requires a successful dex check. There's catching fairy dragons by the tail, a poetry contest with a gnome, goblin wrestling contest, guess the number of feathers on a cockatrice, and then outstare a cyclops. And you win different little prizes with this thing. So then let's see. Then there's snail races. So you can bet on snail races with the and the characters are able to participate as jockeys, and it costs a ticket punch to enter, or they can watch the snail races. And of course, these giant snails, they have to go. The course is 480 feet long, and once the race begins, snails move along the track at remarkable speed, each one covering 80 feet per round by itself. So the which is a lot faster than giant snails normally go. They normally go only 10 feet per round, but these are some seriously fast snails. So it's kind of very interesting. And then there's all kinds of surprises. So again, if you remember Tomb of Annihilation, you remember the dinosaur races, echoes a lot of that, except not quite as violent. It's more comical and less violent than the dinosaur races. Then you can go in the staff area and talk to a very philosophical bugbear guard, who again is a good aligned bugbear guard. And there is a character in here called Thaco. Thaco, which of course is a nod to the old attack roll in early editions of D&D, where you had to try to hit an armor class on a table, and you were assigned, your character based on its class and level was assigned a 2-hit armor class 0 or THAC0 roll. And then of course there's the events that happen every night, including an opportunity to meet with the Carnival owners, and then there's different ways you can have that happen. You talk to certain people and they will tell you things, give you some clues about the Carnival owners and some things that aren't quite right with them, and then beyond into the that affect this realm of the Feywild, Prismeer, the realm of the Feywild. All right, so couple of things. I said last night that as I went through the Wild Beyond the Witchlight today, I was going to try to find a creature to do for Monster Monday next week, and I have found one. Although it's not one that has as deep and long a history, I don't think. I do know there is an early edition of it, but I don't know how many times it's appeared in D&D between the early edition and today. And that creature is the Jabberwock. Again, remember how I said at the beginning that Chris Perkins seems to really take a lot of inspiration from Alice in Wonderland? Well, he, in this adventure, it imagines the Jabberwock as a dragon, and this dragon has the flying capability of dragons, but it doesn't have the breath weapon capability. Instead, it's, in air quotes, its breath weapon is actually an eye gaze, a fiery gaze that shoots rays of fire out of its eyes up to 120 feet away. So this is it makes it yes a very potent enemy. I mean, it's a CR13 enemy. It's one of the toughest creatures that you will find in this whole adventure, which is scaled for creature or player characters of level 1 through 8. But it also gives us some ideas on reskinning dragons. What other kinds of things can you do? How can you change the breath weapons of dragons and make them some other kind of weapon? Maybe you can have dragons that have eye rays, or maybe they can shoot some sort of ray out of the palms of their claws or something like that. Whatever. So you can do, we'll talk a little bit about the Jabberwocky, look at the previous iterations of it, and then see how you might use that in an adventure if you're not doing Wild Beyond the Witchlight. And then there's one more element that I want to bring in, and this is, of course, going back to what I said about Rodrigo Lopez's vision of the Feywild in his Void Saga game. And this is some of the things that happen if you help out one of the rulers of one of the slices of this section of the Feywild. So I think this offers you as a DM some really interesting twists on how can you treat creatures that are able to grant wishes, and maybe how can you find the cracks in what a character asks for and how the wish is granted. So there are offers on wanted posters up around this little realm, and they're looking for this one person that the characters may run across at some point. And if you bring them to the person that's offering the reward, you're not going to get the reward you think. So one offer says, "This sorry wretch has stolen from me. Deliver him to me alive and unharmed, and I'll give you back 10 years of your youth." So what you're given is you're given a yellow rose. And as long as the rose remains unwilted and in the possession of the character, that character relives the first 10 years of their life as a vivid dream whenever they finish a long rest. After 8 days, the rose wilts and loses the magical property. So no. It doesn't reduce your age by 10 years. It gives you back the first 10 years of your life over and over and over again for 8 days. Another one, really a dark one. "This little troublemaker belongs to me. Bring him home alive and unharmed, and you'll win the heart of one you love." So you wind up bringing him, and the reward you get is a little box. And you open up that box, and in it is an eviscerated humanoid heart. That heart indeed was cut out of somebody you love. Not one of your adventuring companions, but somebody you love. Ooh. Yeah, so these are some things, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but those are some things that you could think about as a DM. Like if you really, really, really wanted to, you have players that have just been angling for and trying to, get a wish, and they've been bending every rule and, begging and pleading and just getting on your nerves, and finally you relent and you have a wish available for them. Well, just think about what they ask for. Think about how you can make that be not quite what they expected. Yeah, you fulfilled the wish for them, but just wasn't exactly in the way that they expected you to. So I think that's one of the really interesting things about this adventure is it gives the DM a lot of ideas for things you can do that really don't have anything to do with playing this particular adventure. There's a lot of fodder in here. There's of course a whole litany of monsters. Let's see, if we go back to the table of contents and we go to the different creatures, there's like 13 or 14 different types of creatures that are in here. A couple of constructs and a few humanoid creatures, and a lot of awakened creatures. A lot of creatures in here that have the ability to speak, even though they look like natural beasts. And that's one of the things that you find a lot in the Feywild, is you find tons of awakened creatures. So, everything from like little hedgehogs and stuff that can talk to you, to giant dragonflies that can talk to you and carry you around, and all this other kind of stuff. So that's a nice little addition to the game, is a bunch of different Feywild creatures, and it's just enough to start you on your idea of, okay, so I want to create a homebrew Feywild campaign. Well, here's a few creatures from 5e I can stock there. And then, of course, you can go to, if you go to the, if you go to D&D Beyond into the game rules under monsters, and you plug in all of the creatures that have the Fey tag, there are just pages and pages of them, and so you can put any of them into the Feywild as well. And you know, maybe if you're the kind of DM that likes to go and convert monsters from older editions, you can then of course go back to some of the older adventures of D&D and the older source books for the Feywild and bring those forward into 5e and convert them and use them, or just bring them forward in name and swap out their stat blocks for something that makes sense as a 5e creature already. So it's just a reskinned version of another 5e creature that exists already. Okay, and then so how would I wind up changing some things as written in here? Again, I'm gonna go back to Rodrigo and Critical Hit and the Void Saga, and I'm going to go to their Feywild arc. His Fey beings, his powers that existed within the Feywild are quite a bit more sinister than the powers that exist in the Feywild here. I mean, even though there are some Feywild creatures here that are very powerful, including a Feywild creature that has a direct lineage to the Baba Yaga. Okay. Baba Yaga, who is the person out of Russian folklore that has the hut that walks around on chicken legs. In the DM's guide back in Dungeons and Dragons, the hut was an artifact, and then she has made appearances in several adventures and several novels, and has been released all the way up through 2007 in version 3.5. She's appeared over and over again as different creatures, but she has she has had relationships, and she has had children, and somebody who's related to her, not Baba Yaga herself, but somebody who's related to her, plays a very central role in the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. And that person is extremely, extremely powerful. So it's really kind of interesting how they've woven that all together. I think that I would kind of look at sort of people like Baba Yaga, the people who look fair but feel foul, if you will, and have those be sort of my templates, my ideas for how the powers in the Feywild would behave. There's very few people, even the malevolent people in this adventure, that would outright want to kill the adventurers. I think that the greater Fey and powers in the Feywild, they may not want to cause the death of a character, but they might very well entrap that character so that they're never able to leave. And it never feels like in this particular adventure, it never feels like there's that sort of danger. It always feels like, okay, we're the heroes, we're kind of supposed to survive. Yeah, we're going to run into these travails, and yeah, we might have these setbacks. But for the most part, we might get lost for a while. We might, now there are creatures that are very capable of killing the party, like the Jabberwock. You run into that thing, CR13 dragon. That's got a big chance to kill some, if not all, of the party, depending on what level they are when they meet it. But yeah, it's a little tame. And again, that leads me back to one of my points I was saying earlier. If you want to run this thing pretty much as written, and just maybe pull a little bit back on some of the more scary elements. So there's not that many scary elements, but maybe pull a little bit back on those. This would be a great adventure to run with younger players. Because those younger players, there's lots of funny and cute and whimsical and interesting things. And, you have just enough kid-sized danger and just enough kid-sized suspense. And, but at the end of the day, everything's going to be okay. And so it might be good for some younger players there. If you're going to run this for grizzled veteran players, you probably want to amp up the danger a little bit and maybe throw in a few things that aren't there. Figure out some ways to twist this and have maybe some alternate ways that if they start failing some of the tasks they're trying to do, once they get beyond the Witchlight Carnival, well, they may not ever be able to find a way back. Or they might have to go on much deeper and much more dangerous adventures through the Feywild before they can ever find their way back. So that is something to think about. All right, well, this has gone on for, I wasn't sure how long this was going to take. It went on for close to an hour and a half. I would like to open it up to see if anybody has any questions. Have you had a look at the Wild Beyond the Witchlight yet? Do you have anything? Like I said, I don't want to talk too much about what happens beyond the carnival because I want to save a lot of suspense for DMs that want to run this in the coming weeks and months. But if there are any questions that you have that I can answer, I will try to. Okay, so I am going to go ahead into the wrap up. You have a few minutes to go ahead and ask questions if you want to. Remember, as we talked about at the top, we do have our new Discord. It's something that we have launched. Players from the different games that I run are active in there. I'm active in there. You come by and say hello. If you have questions about Monster Monday, suggestions, anything about additional videos you'd like us to make, or questions about what's happening in some of our campaigns, or you want to talk about it with other people that follow the campaigns, you can come in there and join us on that Discord server. All right, well, thank you everybody for taking some time to hang out this evening. Remember, if you're watching this on Twitch, Be great if you can go ahead and give us a follow or subscribe over there. If you are watching this over on YouTube, go ahead and like the video, share the video, click the post notification bell, and subscribe to the channel. And go check out all of our archives over on YouTube. All of our live streams are archived there, as well as all of the made for YouTube videos that we have created over the last 2.5 years or so. All right, everyone, take care. Hope you have a wonderful evening, and we will talk to you later. Good night, everybody.